Hello. The object of this video is to show you in as succinct a way as possible how to process a film. We're going to start off with how to load the film, and for this we're going to use a plastic developing tank, a pair of scissors, a can opener, which will enable you to take the lid off the film canister, and instructions supplied by Exeter College. There are also instructions made available to students from other colleges. They are within themselves very, very similar. Right, first of all, as the instructions say, we have to ensure that the developing tank, the lid funnel and the spiral are all clean and perfectly dry. So let's have a look. Take the lid off. The inner lid, which keeps the tank light tight, and inside two spirals. This is a central column. There we are, wants to be round that way. Okay, we'll put that back in the tank. When you can see the inside of the tank once again is clean and dry. Okay, so ensure that all of this is clean and dry. The reasons for that are twofold. Firstly, if the equipment isn't clean, then contamination could occur. There could be chemicals or residue of chemicals lying around in the tanks or on the spirals to which the film is going to go into that will contaminate the film. Secondly, if the film comes into contact with water or any other chemical, the film emulsion will expand and then you won't be able to get the film onto the spiral, and so you will actually have problems in loading the film. All right? So, if any of the equipment is damp or wet in any way whatsoever, you must ensure that you dry it. What I tend to do is to pick up a spiral when I'm about to process a roll of film, and I give it a tap on my hand. If I feel any moisture whatsoever, I know that it has to be dried, and I will use a hairdryer to dry that. Not to the point of melting the spiral or burning it or damaging it in any way, but you must ensure that there isn't any moisture on the spiral. Okay. Ensure that you have a pair of scissors, and ensure, as I've said, that you have your can opener. The other thing that you will need, obviously, is your film, and you need to make some note of the type of film. In this case, it's Ilford FP4 and it's 125 ASA. That's the type of film, and out of that information occurs the development time for the film. Each different type of film, each different make of film will have, by and large, a different development time. So you must make sure that you've noted that down. The other thing to say before we go into the darkroom is that it's very common for there to be lying around in colleges different kinds of columns, different sizes. Can you see them there? There are three different column sizes. In this case, we need the column that is going to go into this tank. Can we show the tank and the three different column sizes? Thank you. The small one is literally too small because Although it will fit onto a spiral, it won't make a light tight connection with the top. There will be a gap and light will pass between the two. With this one, you obviously can't put the lid on. So this is the spiral. This is the column that is going to fit into this tank. We can then put the lid on, close it down, making sure that it clicks, and then we put the second lid on. Okay. So, having ascertained that we've got the right spiral, put the column, put the column into the tank. Get rid of the other ones. Throw them away, get them out the way so that they don't in any way interrupt your processing, like so. We're going to show you how now to put the film onto the spirals. We've got two spirals here because it's a two-spiral tank. However, we're only going to load up one of them, and I want to make a quick point about where you actually can load film. You can either load film in a changing bag, such as this, which is a strange object which has two zips, two thicknesses of material. Sorry about this, there we are. 2, 1. There's the second. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. And all the equipment has to be put inside the changing bag. And then you put your arms into the changing bag and you fiddle around until miraculously or otherwise the film is onto the spirals. The best way, by and large, if the college can allow it, is for one to change, to put the film onto the reels in a totally light-proof room. That's without a safe light, that's without any lights whatsoever. We're going to show you how to do it in a simulated situation, and in order to do that, we're going to bring on a blue light now. Thank you. So, we have our film in total darkness, either in the changing bag or in the dark room. We get our pliers and prise the lid. Can we see that? That's it. So, orientate that for the camera. Put that onto the lid, and much as opening up a bottle of Coca-Cola or something similar, you just prise the top of the lid off. Inside, we find the film. Come out. Keep it rolled up, okay? Because if it's rolled up, it's much easier to deal with. And we throw away the canister. So there's the film on the spool. There's the leader that goes into the camera. Can we see that? Can we come back? Can we come back to the film? That's it. And what we now have to do is to get that film onto the spiral. What you should always do prior to doing this in the dark is that you should practice in a room with a with a spare film and practice putting the film onto a spiral. However, we should do this for real. The first thing we have to do is to cut the end of the film. We cut it neatly across. Pardon. Obviously, we're doing this in the dark, and so I suggest that you feel with your fingers in the dark the edge of the film. Make sure it's smooth. Try not to cut it through the sprockets. There is a possibility that it will catch in the spiral. There is a faint possibility. So if it doesn't feel smooth, recut it until you have a smooth edge. That's all you really need the scissors for. Then, picking up the reel, you hold the reel and feel for the two protrusions. Can the camera pick that up? Yes. That's lovely. Here. One here, one here. The film has to be loaded into those protrusions. It can't go anywhere else on the reel. There's a slight sort of indentation at the other side, but we don't worry about that. And it has to go this side because the ball bearings pick up the sprocket holes, and it's the ball bearings that will move the film on. So let's actually go through that. Sorry, it's easier for me. There we are. Got to do it round this way. We got that? Yeah. So keeping the film held in your hand, keeping the cassette, the spiral, pull the film through gently, about 6 or 8 inches, like so. So it's not completely all the way around. It's still held in between the two protrusions. And then at that point, with the film nicely onto the spiral, you can start to move the spiral. It doesn't matter unduly if your hands touch the film. The main thing is that you get the film on as gently and easily as possible. If, for any reason, the film stops and seems to not want to go on any further, you can always give the film a little tap on either side and then try again. But don't force the film, because you'll only damage the film. If you have problems, get hold of the film in the spiral and simply pull the film out and start again. Try not to get flustered, okay, and go through the sequence. You'll obviously practice this in the light first of all before going into the dark. So you should know really what you're doing. Lastly of all, you'll come to the spool at the end of the film, and it's held on with a piece of drafting tape generally, or sellotape, and you just tear that, or you can cut it off the film. Obviously it's all done in the dark. Then with your film loaded up, place it into the developing tank. In this case, we would probably load up 2 rolls of film because we've got a two reel tank. So we'll place the other spiral in on top. Then we place our lid, the inner lid. Make sure that that clicks and is on firmly. Last of all, the top. Place that onto the tank. expel any of the excess air. Your film is now loaded. It's in a light tight tank. The film is safe. If you have any problems with loading the film, simply put it into the tank and go and find a lecturer or a technician. Don't leave film lying around though in changing bags or lying around in a darkroom. Always put it into the tank and take the tank with you. Don't leave the tank lying around if you have any problems. Make sure, obviously, that the central column is in the tank, because the light, any residue light, will pass down the middle of the tank but won't go any further. All right, it will pass down the central column and it will hit the bottom of the tank and it will stay there. Okay? Obviously check the sheet that you're working with, and if you have any questions at any point, once again, find a lecturer, find a technician. Don't be afraid to ask. Thank you. Having got the film into the tank, we're now going to run through how to process the film. Once again, we're going to work with the instructions that we were working with previously. First of all, we must have set up the chemicals. So here we have developer, the stop, the fix. We have two containers, one with hot and one with cold water. We have a timer, because obviously we need to time the amount of development. And we need to know and remember what our film is inside the tank. So the film that we loaded up was Ilford FP4. The developer that we're working with, which is common to most community darkrooms and most college darkrooms, is Ilford ID11, which is the type of film developer. It's also known by another name, which is Kodak D76. They are exactly the same formula. There is no difference between the two of them. Okay, so the first thing that we have to do prior to mixing the chemicals, these have already been placed into the containers, is that we have to wash the containers. This is something that we have to get into doing with photography at any part of the processing procedure. We must ensure that there is no contamination from one container to the other, and we must ensure that the person that used the containers prior to us didn't leave them with residue chemicals. So having done that, we deal first of all with the developer. We're working with ID11 and we're working with Ilford FP4 film. According to these instructions, we should give that film 10 minutes. There you will see on the screen 10 minutes for Ilford FP4. Depending upon the institution that you're working within, that time may vary slightly. Photographers never seem to be able to agree quite what the development time is, but let's stick with that at 10 minutes. If you're in any doubt, always go to the manufacturer's instructions, which will be given with the film that you buy. The other place that you will find manufacturer's instructions for development is on the sides of the developer in terms of the actual storage containers. So let's settle on 10 minutes. And what we're doing with the ID11 developer, which is once again the most common way of working with it, is that we're diluting it from a stock solution to a working solution. So I've already placed 150 millilitres of stock solution into this container. In order to bring it to a working strength, we have to dilute it 1 part to 1 part. That's 1 part developer to 1 part water, 1 to 1. And we need, in total, a total for each film of 300 millilitres. On the bottom of the tank is written 35mm film, 290 millilitres or 10 ounces. That's printed onto the tank. For each film used, that's a total amount. So if you've got 2 films into the developing tank, you need a total of nearly 600. I tend to think in terms of, I round up the 290 mils to 300, and I round, for 2 films, I round it up to 600. Keeps it very simple. So we've got 1 roll of film into the developing tank, so we're thinking in terms of 150 millilitres of developer, and we need 150 millilitres of water. You can't, however, simply go to a tap and pour in another 150 millilitres of water, because you've got to, first of all, find out the temperature, both of the water and of the developer. So, armed with your thermometer, you take a reading of the temperature of the developer, which will be at room temperature. And here I've got 66. We've lost it. Can we come back on the thermometer? There we go. We have got 66 there. Down a bit. There we are. Focused. 66. It's not easy for the camera to pick it up, obviously. It's not easy at the best of times to read a thermometer. We have 66 there. The working temperature for the developer is actually 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 degrees centigrade. So we need to raise, in the first place, that developer up by 2 degrees. But we also have 150 millilitres of water to put in. The way that I tend to mix chemicals, particularly developer, is in the following way. And I find that it's a tried and trusted, a very simple way of working. I have a container of hot water, or let's say warm water, and I have a container of cold water. I know that I've got to add another 150 millilitres of water, and I work the two, gently pouring them into the developer until I have my required 68 degrees. So if I turn that round, then I can see my pouring. That's the cold one. Stop that at 250 millilitres. And it's a little bit cold still. I add a little bit of warm. nearly at the 300. Right, I'm spot on the 68, and I've done that by working between the hot and cold water. So my developer is now at the correct temperature. The stop and the fix don't have to be anywhere near as critical. You don't want to be breaking the ice on them, and at the same time you don't want them to be boiling, but as long as they're at room temperature, that will be fine. The time is critical, however, for the developer, and you should be ideally within 1 degree if possible. And if you're not, then you've got to bring that temperature down or you've got to raise it. Fine. So we're going to process the film for 10 minutes in the developer which we've mixed up. We have our clock. Move everything else out the way that we don't need so that there's no confusion. And we'll set it to the beginning. And we take the lid off the tank. As the instructions say, we carefully pour the developer into the tank and we start timing straight away, obviously having replaced the lid. The other thing that we must do, can we come down a little bit please on the instructions? And if we can pull back from them a tiny little bit, that's fine. Bit too much. That's great, that's terrific. We must agitate the tank. This is critical. So what we will do when we've poured in the developer is that we will agitate the tank like so. It must be done consistently for the first 30 seconds that the developer goes into the tank, and thereafter for 10 seconds on every minute. Once again, with agitation, photographers never seem to be able to agree quite what is the best method. This is as good as any other, and as much as anything else, consistency is important. Do not agitate the tank too vigorously, like so, because if you do, then the developer will rush through the sprockets and you will get uneven development. If you do it too slowly, then once again you're holding the liquid in a suspended state and you're not moving the developer around. What happens in agitation is that the old developer is being replaced by a fresh developer, and it's important that it's done so, as I say, at a consistent rate, because otherwise you will get uneven results between one roll of film and the next roll of film. At the end of your 10-second or your initial 30-second agitation, tap the tank on the table or on the edge of the sink to dislodge any air bubbles. Air bubbles form within the liquid and you've got to knock them off the film. So you do that after every agitation. Okay, let's pour in the developer, shall we? Straight away, place the lid on the tank, start the clock, and start agitating. How are we doing? 20 seconds. "30 seconds are up. Tap the tank. After this, we will agitate for 10 seconds on every minute for the full 10 minutes, as the instructions will say. And if we can move over to the top of the second sheet of instructions. The instructions will continue over leaf. At the end of the processing for the 10 minutes, we will discard the developer. We don't need the developer. It's effectively a one-shot development. So you'll throw it away, pour it down the sink. Try not to throw it all over yourselves because it's an alkaline. It's not going to be extremely harmful, but it is an irritant. So try and keep it off your hands, as with all the other chemicals, and make sure that if your hands come into contact with any of the chemicals, to wash them immediately. So let's assume, in true Blue Peter fashion, that our 10 minutes has lapsed. Stop. We empty the developer down the sink. In the studio here, we're tipping it away into a jug, but no matter. We already have set up 300 millilitres of stop. The stop literally stops the development. It's acid-based, it's acetic acid in a mild diluted form. It's already pre-diluted, so you literally, all you have to do is to go to the stop container, pour out 300 millilitres. There's no dilution that you have to do, and you pour it straight away into the tank. Once again, agitate, same procedure. And you start the clock. It is possible, as the instructions show, for you to use water rather than stop bath. However, if you've got stop bath, it's the preferable of the two. It's going to be more effective. If you use water, it acts as a buffer between the developer and the fix, but it is not as effective as stop bath. So you will stop for 30 seconds minimum, and then you will return the stop bath to its container. We then move on to the fix. The fix, once again, has already been poured into the containers. Once again, 300 millilitres. It will already be diluted by a technician. There is no dilution for you to do. So you simply pour it straight into the tank. Start your clock again. Agitate once again for the first 30 seconds. Once again, it depends upon the kind of fixer that you're using as to how long you will fix. The instructions will be given on the sides of the containers in your college. In this case, we're fixing for 5 minutes. As with the developer, you must agitate every minute. We'll stop that there. And once again, we'll make our Blue Peter assumption that the 5 minutes has lapsed. After your film is fixed, you'll pour the fixer back into your container. If you use a funnel, you must remember to wash the funnel between each usage. So both the fix and the stop are reused. We haven't got a running tap in the studio, so we're going to simulate using our jug of water washing. Pour at least 300 millilitres of water into the tank to cover the film. If you want to pour more into the tank, no harm will be done. The water doesn't have to be at 68 degrees. However, you must cover the film. Alternatively, if you're not going to work from a jug in terms of washing, you could connect the film to a hose. And in order to do that, you would take the top off and the hose would go down into the centre of the tank. And you will push the hose right in there. And what will happen is that in the case of the hose, the water will be expelled down into the tank. Can we pull back a little bit? And it will be forcing the chemicals up. It will go down through the central column and it will be forcing the chemicals, the excess chemicals, out of the sides of the tank here. So that the water will be going down through the middle and will be coming back once again out of the sides of the tank. So that's being done from a hose. You can, however, wash the film using a direct kind of jug method, and the way that one would do that, hold on, I'll get the instructions. As I say, different colleges, different institutions are set up in different ways, so let's deal with both. If you're going to do it by the jug method, then you need to fill the tank with water and invert it for 5 times. That means to agitate it for 5 times regularly, consistently, and then pour the water away. We then do the same process for 10 inversions, filling it up with water and then we pour away. And then we do it for 20 inversions and then another 20 inversions. By doing that, each time we fill the tank and empty the tank and invert the tank, we are mixing the water around the tank and around the film, and we're getting rid each time of the excess chemical. If we're going to do it by the hose method, then we need to connect the tank to the hose and leave the tank connected to the hose with cold water for a minimum, I would say, of 25 to 30 minutes. That's cold water, never hot. Never hot, because it's going to damage the emulsion. And then your film will be washed. The washing procedure enables the excess chemicals, as I've said, to be removed from the film, the excess fix. And if the excess chemicals are not removed, then in time the film will degrade. Okay? At the end of that washing procedure, we will put in 2 or 3 drops, 4 or 5 drops of wetting agent, which is a sort of degreasant, really. It's a little bit like washing up liquid. So we simply put 2 or 3 drops, a little bit there, into the tank and agitate. And I tend to let the film stand in the water and in the washing agent, in the wetting agent, for a minute, just to allow the wetting agent to get around to the film, perfectly on the film. Wetting agent, also known as photo flow, stops any dry marks forming on the film surface. As I said, it also acts as a degreasant. So once you've used your wetting agent, the film can now be taken out of the tank and the film will have been processed. So we can take the lid off and we can take the top off. And our film, there's our empty spiral because we only processed one film. And there is our film on the reel having been processed. Can we, maybe if I place that against the white, can we get a shot of that? There we are. There's our processed film. Okay. The next stage that we go to is drying the film. Thank you. And now we come to film drying. We're not in a situation whereby we can show you a drying cabinet, but we can simulate the procedures that you would run through in order to dry your film. In order to dry the film, you're going to need some tongs, which are tongs with a rubberized center. You see those? That's it. The other side. And we're going to need film clips. The film is where we left it, sitting in its water with its photo flow still creating little bubbles at the bottom of the tank. So we simply remove the reel from the column and you can either pull the film out by lifting it. You just gently provide a bit of purchase in the centre of the film and push the film up and lift the film out, or you can click the reel and pull the reel apart. Whichever way you use to get the film out of the reel, you must take great care to ensure at this point that the film does not in any way fall onto any surfaces or fall onto the floor. So hold the film very carefully, not tightly, because the film is in a very delicate state. It's just been processed. It's gone through this remarkable chemical transformation, and it's very delicate. The emulsion is very apt to get scratched at this point. So here we have our film. The film that I'm holding is not very long. If you've got a 36 exposure roll of film, you're probably talking of about 5.5 feet of film. So that's a lot of film to have dangling in your hands. So treat it with care. And clutching the film carefully in your hand, raise the tongs and firmly and without stopping remove the film, remove the water from the film. Turn the film up the other way and repeat the procedure. Don't over squeegee the film, because if you do, you will find that you will simply pull the film and the friction on the areas that are dry is going to damage the film. Don't overdo it. Get your clip the bottom of the film. You will find that with these particular film clips made by Patterson, that the black ones, the ones with the black part here, have a little bit of lead in them, and they're designed specifically to hold the film straight, hold the film down. We will now connect the film to our other film clip. Make sure that the clip clips right through the actual film base. There are a couple of little prongs, and they must make their way right through the film itself. There's no way that you want your film to fall down during the drying procedure. As I've said, the film is extremely delicate at this point. It must not come into contact with other rolls of film that are hanging up to dry. When you have your drying cabinet, it will either be a steel drying cabinet or it may be one that's got a plastic surround to it. But in either case, you must ensure that you turn off the fan, which will be located generally above, and you must not you must make sure that the film in the drying cabinet, that you don't open up the drying cabinet before you've turned off the fan. It's important that you do this so that particles of dust, any other debris outside the drying cabinet is not pulled into the drying cabinet. And with your drying cabinet, you either zip it up very gently or you close the doors very gently upon the film. I would suggest that with most drying cabinets that you leave the film to dry with the fan switched on for 15-20 minutes. Some drying cabinets you will find you will need 30 minutes. Okay? After drying the film, you will take the film down, reversing the process, take the clips off, your film will be dry, and you will cut it up into strips of either 5 or 6 frames. And then you will put the film into negative bags. Thank you. That completes the drying process.